Welcome back to Confront Your Mind. I'm Jolynn.
I'm Tiffany. Join us as we talk about how to confront the uncomfortable in life,
while also allowing space for laughter as we learn. All right, today we're going to be talking about healthy confrontation. One of the reasons we're talking about healthy confrontation is because everyone...
We love it.
Yes.
Sorry.
That so is, excited. In fact, true.
It is true.
Just really threw me for a loop.
What were you going to say, though? Sorry.
I was just going to say everyone experiences confrontation.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
And then my next sentence was, we are passionate about making sure conflict is done in a healthy way.
That's true.
But no, I think...
Hence, the name of our podcast.
Literally. I think that's probably one of the reasons we're so excited about it, is because it is like kind of what we named our podcast after. Because Tiffany and I have been on our journey of confrontation and finding healthy confrontation.
That's true.
And there's so many different ways to... that confrontation is like used and worked about in life. So we're really excited to dig into this subject today. But before we get started on the pod, we are going to do a mindfulness tip, and Tiff's going to take us away.
All right. So,
fly away.
For today's mindfulness tip, I was thinking about, things that have helped me in the past. That's what we're going to try to share, is just like little things that have helped us. So sometimes they might be a little silly. But mine, and we've talked about it, I feel like a while ago, but we didn't really dig into it. But I was going to talk about how, as far as being mindful and trying to be like present where you are and stuff like that, and to help with anxiety, that, it's always okay to talk out loud when you need to, because I think that can be really helpful. And I know for me, like, whenever I'm stuck up in my thoughts, your mind can kind of run wild. But whenever you actually start to talk out loud and like speak facts to yourself and, just literally talk to yourself, it can be really helpful.
Yeah.
And sometimes that can look like, telling yourself like what is true and what is actually currently going on. And I remember a while back, Jolynn talked about the example of, like feeling a panic attack coming on and like talking about things that were just like factual and real.
Like in your surroundings.
Yeah, just like describing your surroundings. And so it can look like describing your surroundings, which can kind of like bring you out of a panic attack. Or it could also look like, thinking too far into like your relationship with somebody and thinking that someone's upset at you or that they're thinking this and this and that, and your mind is running wild, and say you're alone and so you don't have somebody to talk to or talk it out with, or you don't feel comfortable talking to somebody about it. You can always, out loud talk about the things that are true about yours and that person's relationship. Like saying, we have a really good relationship. Like if I was worried that Jolynn was really upset at me for canceling plans, like I could say to myself, me and Jolynn have a great friendship. We just hung out the other day and we're going to see each other on Sunday to record the podcast. And, like you can just like talk to yourself and tell yourself that, like, the true things.
Yeah. And also too, like, I haven't asked Jolynn if she's upset with me and stuff like that.
Yeah, like actually talk about the facts of like what you're upset about or what you're worried about.
Like breaking down your assumptions too. It's like, because a lot of times we'll assume people are frustrated with us. We'll be like, oh, well, they sent me a text with a period in it. I know they're frustrated.
Yeah, and even talking out that kind of makes you realize how it sounds. If you were like, this text had a period at the end of it. It doesn't really seem like, And also, same thing with like just worrying about, if you worry about your health, like just saying like, I am healthy, I'm stable, I'm not going through a health crisis right now. I know a lot of people worry about that, but just talking to yourself and basically like speaking truths to yourself can be really helpful.
Yeah, I love that. Another thing too I thought of while you were talking about it was like, of course I'm going to forget it now. But, if you go back to your example, like if you're worried that Jolynn's upset at you, You can also say, well, Jolyn is responsible for telling me that she's upset at me. I'm not.
Yeah, like shifting the responsibility.
Exactly. You know, like she's responsible for her emotions. I'm responsible for my emotions. I can ask questions, but I cannot assume her emotions.
Yeah.
And so that's true. Like one of like my favorite logical like things to say if I'm like if I'm like worried somebody's mad at me, I'll just be like, well, like, you know, I'm thinking of my mom. I'm not mad at my mom. I just love my mom to pieces. But I'm like, well, it's my mom's responsibility to tell me that she's upset with me. Or it's my sister's responsibility to tell me she's upset with me. Or it's my husband's responsibility to tell me he's upset with me.
Yeah.
I'm not responsible for trying to figure that out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my main thing that I've tried to work on is like whenever I'm, you know, talking to myself and telling myself what's true and just reminding myself that like, you know, think of like logic and think of like things that I am 100% sure of rather than things that I'm wondering about or I'm thinking might be true. Because I think a lot of times our emotions, like, you know, we tell ourselves like, oh, I'm feeling nervous and so something must be wrong. Like something is wrong. Whereas it might not be, and it's just something that you're worried or you fear might happen, but it's not happened. And you know, it's kind of like the whole, like, cross that bridge when you come to it. Like, if that happens, then you can deal with it, but you don't need to act as if it's, like, already happened. So you can talk to yourself and tell yourself, you know, well, like, this person hasn't said that they're upset at me, or they haven't said, you know, that they're leaving my life or whatever. And, I mean, I laugh, but it's not funny. But yeah, you know, just tell yourself, talk the truth to yourself, and you know, you can talk yourself down sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then it feels really good afterwards too, like sometimes that whenever you're able to do that it was just you and yourself and you were able to, you know, like self-regulate.
Yeah, I think it like kind of gives you power back too, gives yourself some power back.
Yeah. But sometimes that out loud conversation just helps.
Yeah, I love that. That was a good tip.
Thanks.
Yeah. All right. So getting into healthy confrontation. So as always, we're going to start with a definition. And what I found on Merriam-Webster Dictionary.com is that confrontation is the act of confronting or the state of being confronted. How nice is that of a definition? Further elaborated, a face-to-face meeting or the clashing of forces, which I preferred that definition, but I remember reading that.
Clashing of forces.
Yeah, I remember reading that first definition and I was like, huh, that was helpful.
I hate when a definition is like the act of the word that you're looking up. Like, thank you.
No way. No way, bro. Thanks, Merriam. But even further too, there's difference between healthy confrontation and unhealthy confrontation, right? Because why would we have a whole podcast on healthy confrontation if unhealthy confrontation didn't exist? What? Sorry, I just thought that was silly. But anyways, the biggest difference between healthy confrontation and unhealthy confrontation is pursuing confrontation with the goal of understanding. For you to be understood and to understand the other individual involved. And then even further to exploring what unhealthy confrontation is that we've all probably experienced or seen unhealthy confrontation. Yeah. It can look like big verbal arguments, or it can even escalate into physical fights. But further, I would just simply define unhealthy conversation oh my gosh. This mouth and these minds. This mind. Okay.
Yeah.
Rewind.
Take it back. Take it back.
Take it back now, y'all. One half this time. Now slide to the left. Now slide to the right. Crisscross. Everybody clap your hands.
Clapping was so, like, really. Oh my god. It's hard with the headphones because you can hear it, like, echoing. Okay. Okay.
Bringing it back in. Unhealthy confrontation. is often volatile or hostile, and it can look like name calling. I think that's kind of where it starts of what I've seen. It's like name calling.
Doesn't always start there, but
Not always. Raising your voice. That's kind of like for me when people start throwing names out, I'm like, oh,
that's what we're doing.
this is I am now in red flag territory. Like, I missed all the caution flags. Like, because sometimes I'm just like... And then,
it definitely is a clear sign that, like, you're there.
Yeah, like, you're there. You're in unhealthy confrontation.
You've made it. You have arrived.
You can now get off the bus. Okay. But, yeah, like, I think, name calling, yelling, or the silent treatment. I do like
I cannot
the
deal
silent
with that
treatment.
One.
Yeah, no, me either.
It makes my anxiety, like, up here.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, please talk to me.
I'll get on my knees like, please. Please. A word, sir. Give me a word. But no, the silent treatment is actually an unhealthy way of having confrontation. And
it's the opposite of communication.
Right.
Literally being like, I will not communicate with you.
I will not do that.
How would that accomplish anything good?
Yeah. And I mean, there's like obviously some instances where it's like necessary to like not communicate, but I think more so in the in the specific way of like wanting to have a conversation with somebody and going to confront them and like choosing either to like ignore them completely is like kind of what we're talking about today. Not just talking about like when somebody's crossed your boundaries several times and you've tried to communicate with them and then they're still not like they still are not respecting your boundaries. So you step away after like you've told them like, hey, like you have crossed my boundaries. And they're like, sorry, I did not. Gaslighting. And then that's not kind of the situation I'm talking about where like silent treatment's like not okay. Like I think silent treatment, and I wouldn't even call that the silent treatment, honestly.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's more like just like stepping away for space or whatever.
Exactly. But like the silent treatment is like giving somebody silence when they're asking for conversation and like with negative intention is what I think of. But unhealthy confrontation typically will cross boundaries, is disrespectful, and hurts people around you. Another way I like to think of unhealthy confrontation is you versus me, right? So, or it's like me versus Tiffany. So it's like I'm fighting at you, like, yeah, like, Dukes, let's put them up. I'm in such a silly mood today. Silly.
The way you said put them up.
Put them up. Come on, let's go.
Put them down.
Put them down.
But yes, it'd be you versus me.
Right. And so that's what I like if I'm talking about people that are like working through confrontation and like figuring out how to find healthy confrontation. A lot of times I will say like, it's not, especially in couples, I'm like, right now, it's you versus each other, or it's y'all versus each other, like you versus your spouse, or like you versus your friend, whatever it is, like the other person's the problem, right? And they think that you're the problem. And that's not a healthy point of view. I don't think it is. If you want to maintain the relationship, and also healthy confrontation is in the sense of like wanting to maintain a relationship with this person too. Another clarification. And then healthy confrontation is often uncomfortable, but it is typically respectful, especially when you're learning how to do a healthy confrontation for the first time. It can be really uncomfortable because you like don't get to say like you get to say what you want to say, but you're saying it in a very like mature is what I'm thinking of. Like you're thinking through your words and it's not anger. Like you're not reacting in your anger or your frustration or your disappointment or your grief or your sadness. Whatever it is, you've processed that emotion and you've chosen to respond in a different way instead of like letting the emotions rule you, you're ruling the emotions. And sometimes that doesn't feel as satisfying, especially if you've lived your whole life like reacting out of anger. Because you know how good it feels when you like get to break stuff or like yell at somebody.
Just, like, following your natural.
Exactly.
Like that doesn't take any self-control. You just like are acting on the way that you feel.
Yeah, exactly. And, like, that takes me into another point, too, is, like, we learn our confrontation typically from the environment that we're in.
But you didn't say you were talking about...
I'm going to circle back to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I really liked that point.
Yeah, no, I'm going to circle back to, like, what healthy confrontation looks like.
Sorry.
No, you're good. I think I knew I was doing it, too. Because we talked about, like, learning it and kind of, like... So, like, I'm switching points up a little bit here. But talking about learning confrontation is also, because you can learn, I feel like I should have put learning confrontation before both of these. But anyways, so unhealthy confrontation, healthy confrontation, both are conflict styles, and they're learned from, like, your environment in childhood. They can be, like, from watching your parents argue or watching, like, your friends get into fights at school. I think it also has a little bit to do with your temperament as well.
Yeah. I think some of it is, natural temperament for sure.
Because, I mean, we've all heard of that, like, nature versus nurture kind of thing. And I think confrontation is a really good example of, like, a blend of both.
That's true.
A lot of times, like, I know for me and my siblings, I'm more hot-headed than, like, my sister, at least. My brother and I are probably pretty, like, same level. But but Emmy, that's my little sister, she's, like, a more, like, sweet temperament. And now she has her hot spots, but but she's more of a sweeter temperament than I am, and which is, like, temperament, right? But she's also confrontational, but I think our parents taught us how to have, for the most part, I feel like our parents taught us how to have healthy confrontation. Like, hey, this is how we talk to people. This is how we, like, you know, it showed us healthy confrontation in the ways that they would fight. Yeah, go Scott and Jean. Like, they did a good job with confrontation. You know, obviously there was, like, you know, unhealthy confrontation too, because no matter where, you're going to see unhealthy confrontation. But I think having that primary relationship be, like, an example of healthy confrontation is good. Like, my parents had a good, like, the way they fought was good growing up. But yeah, so I think, like, me and my brother and sister all, like, know how to, like, confront people in a healthy way. And at the same time, you know, we go about it differently. Like, Emmy's a lot more soft-spoken. I was a little bit more hot-headed. And, like, I would, like, bounce on things that didn't feel right to me. Like, if it seemed unjust, I'd be like, that is wrong. That is not right. And Noah, like, was a little bit more reserved, and then he would, like, have his moment. But that's, like, one of my favorite things to think about is, like, where you can see confrontation is, like, looking at you, if you have siblings, like, looking at you and your siblings and seeing, like, y'all were raised by the same family, but you all have different temperaments. And so kind of seeing, like, how confrontation or conflict styles differ from there.
That's true. I'm a lot more confrontational than my brother is. Like, he's very, like... Well, I don't know, like, what he was... I think we've talked about it before, and, like, he's a lot more, like... I feel like he's more, like, level-headed or whatever you call it, but, like, he's just a lot more, like, calm than I am in general. And, like, I'm more likely to... But that is, like, the nature versus nurture, though, and it's also, like, other experiences you've had, because, like, I learned to confront people, like, through certain experiences I had after, like, leaving the house, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And so, like, maybe, like, he didn't have experiences like that. And so that made me more, like, a little more feisty than him.
Yeah. Yeah, and so, like, it's also, like you said, like, leaving the house and learning from that, too. Like, it's also, like, how you interact with your friend group as well.
Yeah.
So there's lots of different ways to learn confrontation, but also being mindful of, like, typically, like, I feel like you have to learn the way you want to confront people and work on how you confront people, no matter if you learn healthier confrontation or not. I think that at the end of the day, there's still, like, you have to learn how to apply it, and that's a difficult thing to do because we're all human and we all experience emotions. But you have to learn, like, what's the best way for you. And then going back to healthy confrontation, the healthiest way to have confrontation, although it's uncomfortable, it also looks like holding space for understanding both sides. That's, like, a big thing I think we're going to touch on a lot today is, like, healthy confrontation is understanding for both people. It's respecting boundaries and the end goal being developing a healthier relationship. It's also, like, the way unhealthy confrontation was you versus me or me versus Tiffany. healthy confrontation is me and you versus the problem, right? So we get to like join together and be like, this is what's not wrong, or me and Tiffany versus the problem, right? We get to join together and talk about it, and can even be, it also helps us externalize like parts of ourselves, right? Like, so going back to the example Tiffany used, like if like she thought that I was mad at her and she was getting anxious about it, right? And then she wants to like talk to me about it. It would be, the way that we would go about it wouldn't be like her being like, why are you mad at me? Right? It would be, she could be like, hey, like, are you mad at me? And I'd be like, no. And that would be it. But if it was like, why are you mad at me? Right? It could also look like me being like, hey, like, are you worried about something? Right? Like, hey, let's work together to figure out what's going on. Right? Yeah. And it'd be like, hey, like, let's externalize this assumption that you're having. And let's talk about, like, why you felt this way and, like, how you got to that, like, right? And so that's a lot different than her being like, Jellen, well, why are you ignoring me? Like, trying to come at me.
And I feel like that point really helps with, like, not just causing somebody to, like, throw up their defenses, too.
Right.
Because whenever you take the position of, like, me and you versus the problem, like, especially with, marriage, which like we're married, but it's like, whenever you think about it, it's like even if you're dating or like, engaged, yeah, or even if you're in just like a relationship with a friend or whatever, but it's like whenever you look at it like me and you versus the problem, it leaves so much more space for like both of you, like you're saying, leaves so much more space for both of you trying to figure out what the problem is and what you both can do to go against it. And rather than just like, if somebody comes to me saying, like, why are you upset at me? Why did you do this? Why blah, blah, blah. Like, or like, just throwing shots at me, right, then I'm going to naturally like be, just trying to think like, oh, I didn't do that. I didn't do anything wrong, like whatever, and be defensive. Whereas like if somebody's like, hey, like I have this problem and I just wanted to talk to you about it, and get your thoughts on it or whatever, then I'm more likely to be like, oh, what's going on? And, so I think that it helps with not making people as defensive too.
Yeah, absolutely. But how do we, if we're struggling with having healthy confrontation, right? So like the end goal, and also what we're trying to talk about on this podcast episode specifically, is how do we get to healthy confrontation? What is healthy confrontation? So how do we make confrontation healthy?
Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing to me whenever I think about confrontation is like the main word I think about is respect. Because I think that that's the way that I have kind of trained. I mean, obviously it's still a work in progress, but that's how I've made the most progress and how I've like trained myself to be able to have healthy confrontation is whenever I am going to confront anybody who I like love and do respect. That's the main thing I try to think about when I'm trying to think about like the words I'm going to use, because we have to be careful with our words. It's like it's like I feel like you're talking to a child when you say that, but it's true as an adult too. Yeah. Like you have to be careful with your words because words can hurt and words can stick with people for a really long time. And words mean a lot. And so whenever I'm trying to choose my words carefully, if I like have a thought of a sentence that I would like to say, I will like think of the sentence in my head and think, is this respectful? Like if somebody said this to me, would it feel respectful? Does it sound respectful? And then if it doesn't, then, you can kind of tweak it and then like come up with a respectful thing to say and then say it. And it's not, I feel like it's not so much like trying not to hurt feelings or step on toes, because like it's okay. Like if what you're saying is truthful and honest and respectful, it can still be respectful and still be hurtful. Yeah. Because the truth like does hurt sometimes. Yeah. So it's not like you don't want to like ever hurt anybody's feelings, right, but it's just like you don't need to be purposefully hurtful. Like you're not trying to jab at them.
Right. I even want to add on to that too and say like it's okay for somebody's feelings to be hurt, right? Yeah. Like it is okay for Tiffany's feelings to be hurt. Like obviously not ideal. Like we don't want to hurt people's feelings, and at the same time, like if we're being honest in a respectful way, right? Like there's a lot of different ways to be respectful, but if you're being honest in a respectful way and you're not like intentionally putting somebody down, then, and their feelings are hurt, like that is on them. Those are their feelings, right? Now they get to like talk to you about it and be like, hey, like I really don't like the way you said that, right? Or like, you know, hey, like could you add like a compliment at the end of it too, so that I can know that like you still see my progress or something like that, you know?
And I think too, like,
it's on them to communicate that.
Right, yeah. And I think too, whenever you're having,
But also be aware of how you're talking to people, like you were saying.
right, yeah. And I think whenever you're having conversation, that's in a confrontational manner, it's also okay and can be helpful, because not everyone is like on the journey of working on this. And so, it's okay also to like, not like scold somebody, but you can also correct somebody. So if you're being super respectful and your friend who you're talking to or your boyfriend who you're talking to is not being respectful, you can always say, you know, like, I would like to continue this conversation, but I would like for it to be in like a respectful manner.
Yeah.
And things like that are, I think things like that are awesome to say, because it's like it sounds so, you know, like respectful and mature. And it's like, how could somebody be like, no, I would like to continue this conversation in a disrespectful manner? Like that's embarrassing. So, but yeah, also just explaining.
That's when the silent treatment would go into effect. If someone's like, no, I'd like to continue like absolutely demolishing you with my words, that's when you can be like, okay, I'm gonna leave.
Yeah. But explaining your why can be great too. So whenever you come to somebody, like Jolyn was saying about the you and me versus the problem, is state the problem, you know? So come to somebody saying, hey, I've been noticing that you and I have been really short with each other lately. Let's talk about like what's going on that's causing us to, you know, feel that way towards each other. You know, and even coming up with some ideas like, you know, are we just not getting enough time together lately? Are we feeling overwhelmed? Like, I know, like, for me and my husband, like, lately, like, we're trying to, like, build a house, move in by a certain date, so we've been a little bit stressed, so we've been, like, slightly more snippy with each other, and that's kind of how, like, we both kind of came to the realization of, you know, that it can be, like, an external force that is causing, you know, a little bit of stress between people, and it's good to, like, mention those things, because it takes it, like, it's like me and him versus, like, the house stress, you know? So it's like it creates a you and me versus the problem, and it makes people, like, it makes two people a lot more likely to work towards a resolution, rather than, like, if I came to him and was like, hey, you've been snippy with me, like, what's wrong with you? Like, that sounds so much different than being like, hey, like, I know that, you know, we both have, and it's not like you have to lie, because it normally is true. Like, it's helpful to look at yourself too and be like, you know, it's not just them that's the problem. Like, we are both in this together. It's a two-person relationship. But yeah, and also, like, telling somebody why can also sound like saying something that is, like, nice to them, like saying, like, hey, I really care about our relationship, and I enjoy having a great relationship with you, and so whenever we, you know, are being snippy with each other, it doesn't feel good. Like, it's sad to me, because I love having a good and healthy relationship with you. So, you know, you're not just, like, leaving them to wonder, like, oh, why is she coming to me with this, or why is he coming to me with this? You're letting them know, like, hey, here's my intention. Like, my intention is to get us, like, keep us on track for our healthy relationship. And so I feel like whenever you start off, like, I feel like it's best to just start off the conversation that way, like, just saying, whenever you first start the conversation, before the other person, like, has the opportunity, or not opportunity, but before the other person, it's their turn to talk. Like, whenever you're introducing, like, hey, I'd like to talk to you about this, go ahead and say, like, why are you coming to them, instead of just saying, like, hey, you've been bothering me, because that's not going to go very well. So just saying,
well, and even too, like, a lot of the times you want to talk to somebody because you care about the relationship. So I really like the fact that you said that, is that it's totally okay to be vulnerable and be like, hey, like, I really care about our relationship, and I don't want, like, us to be going in an unhealthy direction.
Mm-hmm.
And right now I'm just noticing, like you said, we're both stressed. It seems like, how can we work through this together, you know? So I really like that, you know, making sure that they know that they're loved and valued, because it almost just immediately takes those defenses down too, and allows for you all to have a more open conversation. Because, I mean, ask yourself, you know, if someone came at you and was like, why are you acting like that? Why are you being the way you're being? Like, and to me, I feel it almost every time. I like my shoulders. I'm like, what the heck? Like, you know, I'm like, why are you attacking me? You know, like, why are you being the way that you're being? You know?
Yeah.
And so, like, versus like when you say like, hey, like, I like really value our relationship, and I just noticed that you seem to be more short with me. Is something going on? Like, I'm just like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm actually,
and it shows compassion too.
Yeah.
Because if I were to ask you, you know, like, I've noticed that this is the way things have been, and like I care a lot about you, and I just want to know, like, are you doing okay? Like, then it's like me showing that I care for you, not just me complaining about your attitude.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that's helpful.
That's good, Tiff.
Thanks.
Good points.
It's helped me a lot.
Me too. Healthy confrontation is the way to be. Healthy confrontation
New
for you and for me.
New intro?
Yeah. What do y'all think? Vote. Vote in the Instagram polls. Healthy confrontation
But
is the way to be.
So, why don't you, Jolyn? I'm going to come up with something for you to do.
Okay.
Except for singing.
Okay. You don't like my tunes?
I don't know.
You don't like these sick beats that I'm laying down?
I normally do, but this one is not, you know.
Healthy confrontation.
So, give us some of your, like, quick shooting points for...
Yes.
For healthy confrontation. Yes. And then I'll give some of mine.
Okay, I love it. I would say, like, if we could bullet point healthy confrontation, right? I would say biggest thing is don't react in anger, or like any emotion.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that's like probably my number one for healthy confrontation, right? Is like a big reason. It's just like letting yourself, don't react in anger. Take time and space to process your emotions, which helps you not react in anger.
Yeah, take a minute.
Exactly. Minute. Like, there is no, like, what is the rush, right? Like, there is no need to identify or to address anything immediately, right? Like, if the damage is done and the hurt is there, it's still going to be there. Like, in 2 days, it's still going to be there. In 5 days, it's still going to be there in 30 minutes, right? So give yourself time to react in a healthy way. Give yourself time to emotionally regulate. That's another one. So don't react in anger. Take time and space to process your emotions. Also emotionally regulate through breath work, grounding, journaling, exercising, or whatever works for you.
Oh, I had a question.
Oh, I thought you were going for a high five.
But I wanted to say something. Yeah. My mind was just, while you were saying that, I was thinking of like, you know, say that you're up here, you know, like say I'm right here and like the top is like here. But say I'm like, of just like feelings. Like bad feelings, like anger and things like that.
So you're like pretty high.
Yeah, like I'm right here because I'm upset at you,
yeah,
right?
Okay.
And
but
then,
you could still get more upset.
Oh yeah, like it goes up here, yeah. But so like I'm right here, and then you know I'm like I come to you and I'm just like we start talking, and then I'm just getting more and more upset. But if I'm here and like you're saying, you know, to like take some time away, like just the visual I thought of was like if you take some time to like go breathe or go take a walk outside or whatever. Before having a conversation, you can like bring yourself back down a couple notches. Then if the conversation, even if it doesn't go super well and it brings you up a couple notches, then you're like, you know, you have some like space to play with instead of like just going up here and then you explode and it's over.
Yeah. No, I actually
That's
really
just like the
that
thought.
visual.
You know, it's like take yourself down a couple notches and then you'll have some room in case the conversation goes really badly.
Right.
You still are only right here.
You're back where you started originally.
Right, exactly. And then you don't pop the top of the tea kettle.
Yeah.
You know?
Because I don't think, I mean, maybe people do. And I mean, I know it does feel good to explode, but a lot of the times too, it does feel good to explode. Sometimes.
Yeah.
I think, well, the explosion comes with a lot of relief. Like, a lot of times when people explode, they're like, I said what I wanted to say. And, like, even though, like, but they can also acknowledge too, like, there was a nicer way to say what they said, right? And there's
Yeah.
also some like regret around it, and you have to say sorry for saying like it the way you said it. And like nobody wants to go back after having a disagreement and like have to say sorry for the way that they like spoke about something. Like, let's just get it out of the way the first time around, you know? That's my thing. But anyways, another point that I have is like, don't make assumptions. I think that's one of the most damaging things that you can do in a confrontation or like conflict or argument or like in a relationship in general, honestly, is making assumptions about the other person. Kind of like what we said earlier. It's like, and like, I mean, it's almost like it's choosing to be ignorantly bliss, right? It's like, because like, you know, when people are upset, right? Like, for the most part, but it's also like you have to let people come to you when they're upset, and you can ask, you can be like, hey, like, I'm seeing that you seem a little bit down today. Like, is everything okay? But I would say, like, even that, even in that example, right? I said an I statement. It's like, I'm noticing that you seem down today. Is something going on? So it's also saying, like, this is what I'm observing in you. Are you okay? Like, it's kind of like Tiffany said earlier. It's like checking in, letting them know that you care. It's being compassionate. You know, so don't make
instead of saying like, you're sad today. What's wrong?
Exactly, right. Like,
because no one wants to be told like how they feel.
Right.
Personally, I hate that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I know, like, Giannis and I, like, when we, like, first started, like, dating, and when we were married, too, like, I would say, like, you're so angry, and he would be like, he's like, I'm not angry, and then, like, I was like, you're obviously angry right now, because you're coming at me with that attitude, and he was like, yeah, because you just told me I was angry, you know, and it's like, it's not even what the, like, it's not even what the fight's about, right? Like,
then
now
you're fighting about you putting something on him.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like so pointless.
Like
so yeah.
20 feet away from my mic. Sorry if you haven't heard a word I've said.
So like, don't make assumptions. It's just my mom always used to say, making assumptions makes an ass out of you and me.
Yep.
So
we learned that in nursing school.
Yeah. So like, that's like one of my favorite like catchphrases, I think.
It's really a good thing. It's a really good way of remembering that assumptions are so bad.
Yeah, it's like, it makes, like, if y'all both look stupid when you start arguing about, like, the fact that one of you labeled the other as mad, and now it's just absolutely silly.
One of my professors in nursing school, the one who taught us that, whenever she would remind us not to, like, assume things about a patient or about, like, a disease or whatever, she would be like, remember not to assume, because it would, like, remind you of the phrase.
Yes.
So you have to start saying assume, like, assume.
Assume.
Do it.
Do it. It's one of my things, so that's what I do. Also, I think one of the ones that I like to say too is believing the best in the person you're talking to. It's kind of like, I almost was like, is that making an assumption when I was writing it down? But I don't think that it is. I think it's also just giving the person the benefit of the doubt too. Like, I mean, you know, within reason, obviously, but I think that's the best way to have a healthy confrontation is like assuming the best giving the person the benefit of the doubt and believing the best in them.
Yeah, I think that sometimes looks like believing the best, like, until it's disproven.
Right.
Because I like thinking that way or I like to try to think that way because I sometimes, like, will be, like, pessimistic and, like, think the worst. And then it takes it's, like, a lot harder to, like, turn your attitude around and be like, oh, maybe that's not true. Rather than, like, believing the best. And then, like, you know, if it's disproven, then you were wrong. But, you know.
Exactly.
It's something I've tried to work on.
I like it.
Thanks.
It's the best way to go. That terrible wink. Another point is using I statements. I've talked about this a little bit already, but let feelings be feelings and not the other way around. So like, I feel sad versus I feel like you don't listen to me, right? Like, I feel sad because I don't think that you listen to me. That's a way healthier way to say that than,
yeah,
you don't listen to me, or like, I feel like you don't listen to me, because of course it's like kind of like what we were saying, it's that assumption part of it, you know. So yeah, trying to let just like feeling statements be feeling statements and using I statements too, like, I feel sad, not like, you make me sad, right?
Yeah,
stuff like
then
that.
You're telling somebody what they're doing.
And nobody likes that. Another point is practicing self-awareness. I think it's good even in that initial part of like not reacting and taking time to emotionally regulate. But once you're in the conflict and confrontation, is checking in with yourself as you're in it, making sure like you're feeling good. Like Tiffany said, checking that meter that's like telling you like, okay, like if we're getting up to that high point again, like maybe we need to go for another walk, kind of thing. And then listening, don't interrupt. I have a funny story about that later. And then give yourself and the other person grace. Yeah, I think this is my biggest point. It kind of goes into giving the other person the benefit of the doubt and believing the best. But I talk about grace a lot, and I think it's just not only do you need to extend yourself that grace, but you also need to extend that grace to the person you're arguing with. And just remember that you're a human being. You made a mistake. They're a human being. They make mistakes. You all are bound to mess up. It is in your DNA. It is a part of life, and just remembering too, it's like we get to be easy on people. We get to give them the benefit of that. We get to give them grace, and everybody deserves grace. So
yeah, I like that a lot.
Those are my bullet points.
Well, some of mine are the same, because like my first one was to listen, so I just said let someone speak their mind and allow them to confront you as well, because that's something too that I think we meaning everybody can get like carried away in sometimes, is that especially if you swing more towards an anxious mindset and you have been sitting there like going over this conversation over and over in your head, you have worked out in your head like the way you want it to go, and sometimes I feel like we don't even like want the other person to be part of the conversation, like we just want to like say our piece, and we want them to like say okay, and it's like they have their own side of things too, and like they are allowed to have their opinion and their thoughts and their feelings too, and so they might bring up something that like you don't know, and so listen, because like they might have something good to add or something that will make you realize something different is going on than what you thought. So like be open-minded and don't be so closed-minded in the conversation of like, this is what I want to say to them, and then I want them to say this back. Like that's like one of those things where sometimes you get stuck in like wanting the conversation to go a certain way, and like you've already got the whole thing pre-planned, but it's a conversation with a person. Like it's a real person. It's not like you're talking to a robot, like so it's like,
not like you're talking to yourself.
Yeah, so it's like be open-minded and like give them time to respond and to speak too, instead of just like listing your points that you want to say.
That's a good point.
And then I said the I statements versus you statements. You did good covering that.
Oh,
I'm
nice.
Not going to talk about that.
Okay.
But speak factual things. Kind of like Jolene was saying, but like it's okay to talk about how something made you feel, but like she was saying, like be careful like what you're saying, because you could still say like, I feel like you're always saying something hurtful to me, or like I feel like you don't care about me, or something like that. Like saying, you can still like, just because you start with an I feel statement doesn't mean that it's like a good statement, because it can still be not a good statement. So just saying like saying I feel, but then like following it up with an emotion, right? Exactly. Like not I feel like you do blah blah blah, but rather say like I feel like, and then keep talking about like you too, like say like talk about your experience, say I feel like whenever I say this, and you can say something that they've done, but then you can say like the way it makes you feel, like it makes me feel sad when you, and then you can like follow it with a fact. So if it's something that they've like actually done, black and white, 100% done, then I think it's fine to say. That's what I would say. Like I would say it would be okay to say like, say that your friend tells you that this is gonna be a dramatic example, but say that your friend calls you ugly all the time. Then you could, if they actually say those words, then you could say like, I feel hurt whenever you call me ugly.
Period.
Right?
That is hurtful.
Because it's like a fact. It's something that they've said, and it's okay to like quote something that somebody has said to you. But those are good things because they're facts.
Right. Well, and I want to add on to it too. If you have to say, I feel like, it's not a feeling. Like, that's like, if you have to say, I feel like, it's not a feeling. It's a thought.
So you're saying I feel this.
Yeah, so like a lot of times, like one of the biggest changes like I've made whenever I like talk to people is I'm very aware of the way that I'm talking to them, right? So I'd be like if I was talking to you, like I feel really I feel happy because I think that what we're doing is awesome, right? Like I love doing a podcast with you, so I feel happy about that, right? So like versus like if or like I know that's like not very confrontational, but that's just how I feel. That's literally how I feel right now. Let me choose something that I don't feel right now. Like it'd be a lot different. Like so like if Giannis is playing video games, my husband likes to play video games, and I also like to play video games. But I know a lot of people have these thoughts around video games, and like people don't hang out with other people when they play video games. So like if Giannis, it's just an easy one to go to. So if Giannis is playing video games and even so you can say a couple of different things here, right? Like, and he's not hanging out with me, even though last night I played Sims for 4 hours. So that goes to show who's the real gamer in this relationship. He literally, it's like so rare when like Giannis comes to me while I'm gaming versus like me coming to him. And last night he came to me and like he was like, hey, and I was like, hey. And he was like, what are you doing? And I was like, I've been playing Sims for 3.5 hours straight. And he's like, are you having fun? And I was like, yes.
Yes, and I'd like to play for 4 more hours. I'm not going to bed tonight.
I could play all night. And he was like, okay. Well, he's like, can I just sit with you? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. Do you want to see my family? But I had just bought an expansion pack too. Oh my god, okay, anyways.
I feel like you're like really getting off track.
Yeah, I'm getting off track here. Anyways, so like if I were to feel ignored because Giannis was playing video games or even last night, like let's say Giannis was feeling ignored when I like was spending 4 hours playing Sims. And he was like, and he came downstairs and he goes like, you've been playing Sims for a long time, right? Like that's an assumption, right? We've already covered that. But if he were to say, I feel like you don't even care about me because you're just playing Sims, right? There's no feeling in that statement. And it's also like throwing an accusation at me, right?
Whereas, and an assumption. That you don't care about him.
Exactly.
Just because you've been playing Sims for 4 hours.
Exactly. Right?
Like the two are not... Oh my gosh, there's a really good book about this.
Oh, go for it.
I don't know what it's called.
Gosh.
And it's called... Redefining the Mind.
Oh, yeah.
Is that what it's called?
I think so.
The one I told you about?
Yes.
I think it's Redefining the Mind, but it talks about point A and point B and how we make these automatic connections, like connecting like Jolyn has been playing Sims for 4 hours. That means she doesn't care about me, and it talks about like throwing a cut into it and thinking like that's not true. But we just automatically make these connections, like our brains make these connections, and we say A equals B, but it doesn't. Like 4 hours of Sims does not equal Jolyn doesn't care about Giannis. But you know, you might.
It means that she has a problem.
It might mean some other things, but it doesn't mean that. But it's like we just make that automatic connection, and to us it's like the truth, you know? And so it's a really good book talking about deconstructing. That's why it might be called... No, it is. It's Redefining the Mind. Something like that. But anyway, it talks about like not... stopping those thought processes and thinking like, is this true? Like, does A equal B? And then you can realize like, no, it doesn't. But
yeah, anyway, that's that self-awareness piece too, is like asking yourself if it's true. This did not happen last night, so this is a completely false example. But also like if Giannis was feeling ignored, he can come to me and say, right, like, hey, Jolyn, I'm feeling ignored. I'm feeling ignored, right? I'm feeling insert emotion. I'm feeling ignored. I am thinking, that's a whole sentence, I'm feeling ignored, period. I'm getting grammatical with it. I'm feeling ignored, period. I am thinking that you don't care about me because you've been playing Sims for 4 hours, period, right? Like, right? Like, that's a whole, like, different vibe. I know I was really intense with that, but I'm like... Hey, Jolyn, I'm feeling ignored. I'm thinking that you don't care about me because you've played Sims for 4 hours and haven't checked on me, right? like, that shows me, like, one, his feeling, two, like, his, like, that's that line that you just talked about being thrown in the middle. It's like, you know, you don't have to ignore the line in the middle, but you can, like, bring it into the conversation, right? And, like, I almost say, like, let your partner disprove that thought, you know? Like, let them
and I like that you said that, because it's okay to say that that's how you feel, as long as you're not saying, like, you don't care about me or whatever. And I mean, it's probably not like I'm not saying you should say, like, I feel like you don't care about me, and that's not going to upset somebody. Like, it probably would.
Right.
But, like, it's better than saying, like, you don't care about me.
Right. There's, like, I feel forgotten. I feel dismissed. You know, like, finding, and, like, also it's really fun to do, like, work around, like, feelings and finding feelings that, like, fit in what you're, like,
also not saying like astronomical things is really helpful.
Right.
Like, saying, like, you could say,
I've been abandoned.
Well, instead of saying, like, I feel like you don't care about me, you could say, like, I feel like you don't want to hang out with me tonight. Because that's, like, a much smaller accusation. Because then you could almost say, like, yeah, you know, I actually, like, to be truthful, like, I kind of wanted to be alone tonight.
Right.
And that's not a harmful thought, you know? But saying, like, you know what I mean? So it's, like, try to also, like, it's also really helpful to keep your, keep the things that you say, like, real, not, I was going to say small, but, like, realistic to, like, what's actually going on. So, you know, saying that I don't feel like you want to hang out with me tonight is a, like, realistic and not an astronomical thing to say.
Yeah. But, you know, too, like, we obviously love confrontation, because we, like, could go on and on about, like, healthier ways to confront people. But those were all of our bullet points.
I had one more.
Oh, go off, sis. Sorry.
I was going to say, are you wrapping this up? Because I have one more.
Go off.
But I love you keeping us, like, you know, I was like, let's go. So my last thing is, try to let go of needing to be correct. Or
that is so good.
Or needing the person to agree with you.
Ooh.
Because, this one really, really hit me. So,
slay queen.
Like Jolyn said earlier in the beginning, the goal is to reach or increase understanding, not to reach an agreement. And that one's really hard for me, because I used to think that the end of the argument had to be, like, that you guys come to an agreement. And I've completely, like, unlearned that, and, like, learned that that's not really, like, it's okay to be like, okay, well, like, you don't have to come to the conclusion of, like, especially what I said earlier about you've come into the conversation wanting it to go a certain way.
Right.
I feel like normally you want it to be the other person saying, like, you're so right. I'm so sorry. I am in the wrong. You are in the right. And that is, like, not real life. So it's, like,
it's not realistic at all.
You know, allow the other person, like I said, they're not a robot. They're a person. They are having their own experience. Allow the other person to have their own opinions, feelings, and thoughts. And like, they don't have to agree. Like, they can, like you said, they can disprove what you say. They can say, actually, let me tell you, like, if you're being open-minded and, you know, open with the conversation, they can say, let me tell you actually what I've been thinking about, or what I've been experiencing, or, you know, so, you know, just allow for that openness of conversation, and allow for them to be their own person and have their own experience, and that it's okay if they, like, they don't need to tell you that, you don't need to be seeking the validation of, like, the way you're feeling is exactly correct. They can, the whole point of, like, a confrontation, I feel like, can also be to learn new things, like, to come to an understanding of, actually, no, like, what you think I'm feeling is incorrect, or what you think I'm doing is incorrect. Here's what I'm actually doing. And then you can say, like, oh, okay. So come to a confrontation, like, fully being open to the fact that, like, you could change your mind about something. Like, don't be so, you know, like, sure of something.
Right, yeah. I mean, I think that's, like, super important to remember. I love that point. That's, like, I'm glad we didn't miss that point.
I know.
I'm like really glad we didn't.
Hold on.
That's a good one. That's fire. That's straight fire.
Would you?
Yes.
But
obviously, confrontation is, like, super important, because it's, like, so I mean, if you really think about it, there's all these small confrontations throughout the day, right? Or like little opportunities where there's like little confrontation. That's my cat. That's Chester. Anyways, oh, that boy. But there's lots of little small confrontations and opportunities for small confrontations, which is why, and like I also like to dismantle the idea that confrontation is inherently a bad thing, because it's not. It's actually a really healthy way to like we've just said, like to understand, to like find common ground, or to like find to like hear what the other person's thinking and to learn.
It feels so good to leave a confrontation like feeling more settled than before.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Like,
it's an opportunity to like get your relationships to a healthier place and like grow, have deeper friendships and relationships. Like, so that's super important. But why is it important?
Well, I'd say like confrontation to me is like the opposite of avoidance, because I was, as you know, a very avoidant person for a very long time, and so to me, I'm just like, no, we're not gonna be avoidant, and so avoidance, I learned like it's so harmful to yourself, because like I used to be avoidant even like with myself, and in relationships, super avoidant, and so it's very harmful. Like I just learned how harmful it was. So that's a reason to be confrontational. And then, if you never learn to confront somebody and tell them, you know, what you need, or learn about them, or set boundaries, or whatever your confrontation is, then things aren't going to get better. And that's something that I learned about being avoidant, is like, whenever you're avoidant, sure, you're like keeping the temporary peace, but you're not going to make any progress. And so that's something that I think is good about confrontation, is that it, like you just said, like it'll actually get you somewhere. It'll improve your relationships. Sometimes we feel that someone who knows us well and loves us, someone that we're close to, like a family or a close friend, should be able to communicate in the way we need, just magically. Like they should just know. And
like reading your mind.
Yeah, like mind reading, and that's not real.
That is not a real thing. Nobody can read minds.
Well, that'd be really nice. It is unrealistic, and it doesn't work.
Delusional.
And
delusional.
And like when we talked about honesty, we kind of talked about how like if you're not honest, you know, it'll like fester in your body, and like it will manifest itself in nasty ways. That's kind of how, same thing with like confrontation. Like if you're avoiding things, like for me, it manifested itself as a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, and sometimes even guilt of, you know, like just like wanting to talk to somebody and tell them your honest thoughts, but you just like you're just holding it inside.
Yeah, I want to second that. I want to second that too. Is that for me, it also manifests like if I'm not confronting myself, or if I'm avoiding things, like I feel really, really anxious. So. Yeah. Because I think it keeps you from being authentic.
It's a lot of anticipation too.
Yeah.
Like whenever you know, okay, eventually we're going to have this uncomfortable conversation.
Right.
The longer you wait to have it, like the
bigger it gets.
Yeah, exactly. The bigger it grows.
Yeah. So there's lots of examples of healthy and unhealthy confrontation in social media. Although there's not as many healthy ones. We really struggled to find a healthy one, but Tiffany found a good one. But I have an example of unhealthy confrontation in social media. It's, if you watch Bridgerton season 1, I'm so excited for season 4 to come out.
You're saying social media, but you're like meaning...
I'm meaning like TV.
Yeah.
I don't know how to say it. I'm like TV shows, movies, like that seems longer than media. Okay. But I mean, it's really not now that I think about it. Anyways, the Bridgerton. Sorry,
that was completely unnecessary for me to correct, but
It's okay.
I was like...
I've been thinking about it for a long time, and I couldn't figure out a better way to say it, but like, I think I should just go ahead and say TV shows and movies.
So Bridgerton.
Bridgerton. Oh yeah, so unhealthy confrontation is in Bridgerton. And I feel like shows and movies show us that, like, a lot of unhealthy confrontation, because like that's where drama comes from, and you're like, because like what's exciting about like watching somebody be like, I feel strongly for you, I feel strongly for you too, I would like to marry you, I think I would like that too, with like literally no like conflict at all. Like it's just like two people being like, I like you, let's get married, great. Like, you know, versus like in Bridgerton, like Daphne and Simon are like, I've trapped you in this marriage. No, I have trapped you in this marriage, when they're actually both like crazy in love with each other. But they both like are avoiding each other, and he's like, I have ruined your life because I can't have also he's a little liar, or he was. He was like, I can't have children, when in reality
Don't ruin the show.
Oh. Are you gonna watch it?
Maybe I am.
Oh, are you really? Because I'll watch the whole season with you again.
I've never even like.
Holy! Oh my god, we gotta watch it.
I'll think about it. We can watch the first episode.
Okay, I'm cool with that.
Okay.
Have you watched Emily in Paris?
Only what I've watched with you.
Okay. Anyways, this is.
She's pissed.
Because the new season's gonna come. They're filming
I know.
the
I
new
did
season.
see that actually.
We need to do.
I'll watch
watches.
that.
Okay. You should. I think you'd like Bridgerton too.
Okay.
Giannis and I watch it together, but he makes fun of it the whole time. So.
I might do that too.
Which is okay, but
yeah, it's alright. It's
just kind of funny. It's kind of funny to rewatch. Anyways, off track. Daphne and Simon, they're like, they both believe they've trapped each other in this marriage, when in reality, like, that's just not true. Like, they both really wanted to be with each other. That's why they got married. Like, you know? Like, anyways, so that's just an example of unhealthy confrontation. It's just that, obviously, those assumptions that we talked about earlier, and avoidance around it.
You want me to do a healthy?
Yeah.
Oh, you go ahead.
No, I was going to say, like, neither of them, until, like, the very last episode, were like, I want you, right?
They just, like, were avoiding it.
Yeah, well, there's, like, one other episode. But anyways, it was all, like, but there was still deceit and lies. But anyways, unhealthy.
Yeah, there's a lot of
so
unhealthy
give a healthy
examples.
one.
So healthy, I'm going to say, I mean, it starts unhealthy, but, you know, my show, New Girl. Obsessed. I was trying to watch back scenes about this, and I was cracking up. But I can barely even talk about this show without, like, crying, laughing. I don't know why. I think it's so funny, but it's hilarious. But anyway, when Jess and Nick break up, I guess I'm giving spoilers, but okay, if you haven't watched New Girl, like, they literally took it off Netflix, so you need, you know.
Right. Well,
anyways.
I feel like New Girl's different than Bridgerton, too.
Yeah. So whenever Jess and Nick break up, if you've seen it, when they're having Winston's honey roast. I'm sorry. It's so funny. I'm gonna cry. Okay, but so Jess is, like, getting drunk and, like, because she can't tolerate, like, the fact that they've broken up, and she's upset, and then, Nick is, like, acting like he's totally fine, and Jess is falling for it. Like, she's like, he doesn't even care after we've had this serious relationship and broken up, and so he's hurting her, and then she's just sitting here, like, getting drunk, and then she's, like, firing shots at him, like, talking about, like, how stupid he is, and, like, how he calls, I don't
Sorry,
know.
that's my other cat.
I don't know, but she's making fun of him,
Ash.
and so they're both hurting each other, and so then eventually they finally talk, and she's honest with him, and, like, she's like, she uses her I feel words, like, she's like, I feel like she's
Should
like,
we let him in?
yeah, is that Chester?
That's Ash.
It sounds like Chester.
Ash is.
I mean, I believe you.
Ash has a cuter meow.
You know your children.
I do. You can keep going.
Okay, so anyway, she uses her I feel statements, and she's like, I feel like, you know, I'm really upset. I can't remember exactly what she says, but she says, like, I feel like I'm really upset and you're just fine. Like, you're acting fine with it. And he's like, fine, like, I'm falling apart, but he's smiling the whole time that they're having the conversation, because he confesses to her that he took Schmidt's anti-anxiety pills. Like, I don't know what he took, like a Xanax or I don't know what, something like short acting. And so he's, like, smiling really big and feels like he's, like, floating on a cloud and all this stuff, but he admits to her that he's actually, like, dying inside, and he's, like, feels so sad and all this stuff. And so they both realize, like, you know, that they're feeling the same thing, and it's kind of like that whole thing of you and me versus the problem, and the problem is their breakup. Do you want me to stop? I'm pouring my heart out over this example.
I'm listening. You said the problem is their breakup.
Yeah, and so they realize that they come to the same place, and, like, the problem is, like, that they're gonna have to figure out how to, like, live in the same loft with their friends and, like, have the same mutual friends even though they broke up. And so, like, they come together and realize that, like, they are experiencing the same thing and that they were, like, both being dishonest with each other. And so it was a really good, like, conversation they had. And and it helps them to move forward in the process of healing. I'm done. I'm finished.
I think that was a good example.
Thanks.
Because I had totally forgotten that. And I also was like, when I was looking for examples, I was like wanting to be very on the extreme side. Like, there was no problems from the beginning. But I like that you like showed that there was initially problems.
Yeah, because theirs started out very unhealthy, but it was like turned into like a really good conversation that they had.
I think that was good. Yeah, thank you for finding the healthy guy. I like texted Tiffany, I think, was it last night or the night before?
I think it was the night before.
Yeah, I was like, can you please find a healthy one?
I was struggling.
It was so hard. I like looked and looked for like 2 or 3 days and I could not find anything. But when I looked up unhealthy, they gave me plenty of examples. All right, let's do personal stories next. Okay, I'm going to let him out again. Should I pick him up?
Sorry. No, I don't think he liked it.
Get out, little stinky. He's so blind.
Do you want me to go first?
Yes.
Okay, I'll try to make this quick.
Or I can go first. It's up to you, though.
I'll go.
Okay.
So...
Sorry about the interruption.
Got married around 4 years ago. And my husband, Bradley, that's when I was still in my very avoidant phase. And I was like trying not to be because I was like, oh, I really don't want to be avoidant in my marriage. But it's really hard to like change, something that's so deeply rooted. Right. But so whenever we had any sort of like disagreement or like conversation, whatever, Bradley eventually told me that he felt like he had to like pull like anything that like I said, he had to like pull it out of me. And that's how he described it. Not my words. And also, anytime he confronted me about anything, I would cry and shut down. And I just, we couldn't even have a conversation because I was literally, like, sobbing. Like, it wasn't just, like, tears running down my face. It was, like, I couldn't breathe, type of thing. And it was sad. Thank you for your compassion.
Yeah, that was sad. I was just like, oh, that's so sad.
The other day, we were, somehow, like, it came up. I think we had a really good conversation about the whole, like, house thing and how it was stressing us. And it was, like, a great conversation. And then I was like, okay, like, let's do dinner, whatever. And then I said to him, don't you love how we can have a conversation now without me crying? And we both laughed about it. And so, like, we've come really far, or I've come really far. But on a serious note, like, it took me a long time to learn that. And it really helped for him to explain to me that a lot of times he's not... I read the wrong... It helped for him to explain to me that he's not attacking me, but trying to understand me. And he had to explain to me that a lot of times he's not even angry, and that it prevents growth for me to refuse to talk and shut down the conversation. And that's something that he told me that really, like, stood out to me is that, he was like, you're not, kind of like Jolene said earlier, like, you having these confrontations or conversations, like, help grow your relationship with anybody. And whenever you are, like, I would just cry and not speak. And so, I wasn't contributing to the conversation. And so it was preventing like growth in our relationship. And he wasn't able to learn anything about me other than I'm not able to have a conversation. That's what he learned. And, so I had to slowly understand that it was safe and good to have these difficult conversations sometimes. And one of the main things that he would say to me, which, like points for him, he would say, that we're a team. Like, he was like, I'm not against you. Like, we're a team. And that statement really just, like, helped me so much to feel, like, loved and comfortable because I was like, oh, like, I've just never, like, heard someone put it that way.
Right,
And
yeah.
it was really
It's a
helpful.
healthy way to look at it.
Yeah, it was just really helpful because he was like, we're on the same team. Like, we are. And I used that in the future whenever, like, my patients would get upset at me. Like, whenever I would tell them, like, you know, you can't have any more pain medicine because you're maxed out. And then they would, like, get really mad at me. And I would be like, look, like, I wish you could have some more. Like, I don't want you to be in pain. Like, and I've used those statements, like, with people, and it's helped a lot. Just being like, look, like, you and I are on the same team. We have the same goal, is for you to not be in pain. Like, do you think I want you to hurt? Like, no. And especially, I don't want to be yelled at. So it's like, if I had some more, I would give you some. But
I would love to knock
that's
you
a whole
out.
nother, like, tangent. But, yeah, so it's like that mindset really helps, and that's just something that I learned.
Yeah, I love it. All right, my
Take
turn.
it away.
Oh, fly away. Okay, so my also has to do with my husband. Surprise, surprise.
Surprise.
Me and Giannis, it is no secret that since we're married, also that we're just me and Giannis is Giannis. We fight.
It's no secret.
It's no secret. But also, I think, you know, fights happen, arguments happen. When we first got married, when we got into arguments, I was like big on interrupting. Especially when I'm in an argument, my mind moves so fast and I feel the need to just shut things down and if he said like one thing that was incorrect, I'd be like, that's incorrect. And like probably exactly like that. I'd be like, and that's incorrect. And like just full on interrupt him. Like he'd be like, yeah, well, I think that you're doing this because you're mad at me. I'd be like, that's incorrect. And like he would literally be talking. Or I would just try to put it like just interrupt. Like I was just a big interrupter. I'm like, that's just kind of like, you know, what I would say like that's kind of like just the way I like have like always argued is like putting my like opinion in, and like that's kind of how I've like fought and won arguments for the most part. And then Giannis came to me and he was like he actually came to me like very calmly, and he was like if he would get mad at me in the arguments. But anyways, at one point he did come to me in a very calm way, and he was like, I really don't like it when you interrupt me. And like was very like
healthy communication.
He was very healthy. He was like, I don't like it when you interrupt me. I don't. Like he just like shared like why he didn't like it, and like we talked about it, and I was like, oh, okay, like I don't want to interrupt you because I don't want you to feel disrespected by me, because that's not the kind of relationship I want to have with my husband. And obviously, like, I messed up after that, too, you know? Like, it wasn't like I was able to, like, after 23 years of my life, like, interrupting people in arguments, like, that I was just suddenly able to, like, stop interrupting. But it was a lot of, like, work for me, and, like, even, this is where it kind of gets funny, even to the point where, like, initially when I was first doing it, I would, like, if we were arguing and he said something that I didn't like, or, like, I wanted to say something to, I would, like, raise my hand like this. I'd be like, don't you know I have something to say?
I would just love to watch that happen, and him, like, being like, I see that.
Yeah, he was like, it was so, like...
It's like a teacher, like, I see that hand and I'll get to you.
It literally was. And, like, it was, like, although it felt, like, to me, I mean, obviously my hand raising was still pretty aggressive. Like, I was like... And then if he made another point and, like, I had one hand up, I'd be like, 2 points. I was like, I have thoughts, and they need to be heard. I'm not joking with this. He would, if I could pull him in here right now, he would vouch for it. Because, like, I didn't want to interrupt him, but I also wanted it to be well known that, like, there was something wrong with the statement. Or that I just had something to say about the statement that he just said. And, which actually, it, like, worked for us because, like, I was not verbally cutting him off and then pushing and, like, plowing with what I wanted to say. But I, like... He finished, like, what he was saying, because I would not talk. Like, I would put my hand up, because it also kind of helped me know, like, I am, because I think a lot of times in arguments, I think I'm going to get, like, looked over or passed over. And, like, I feel the need in arguments to be like, like, I have to be heard. But with him, he was like, I will get, like, he's like, I want to hear what you have to say. He's like, but
it's like he needs to say his piece too.
Exactly. He's like, but I also deserve to be heard. And I think that was, like, a big moment for me where I was like, oh, that's 100% right. Like, you know, not that I didn't think it was right. It's just the way that I was arguing it. I obviously wasn't acting like that. But yeah, so I started my no interrupting journey with raising my hands in arguments because it's baby steps. And, like, for me, that was good because I knew that, like, it was known that I had something to say, but it also helped me remember the point that I had raised my hand on. So, like, because when we talk, sometimes it goes on for a long time when we're, like, expressing ourselves. And so if I, like, raised my hand on, like, he said something about orange juice, like, right, like, and I, like, was like, orange juice. And, like, then, like, when it was my turn to speak, I'd be like, and with the orange juice, and then I would, like, pull my hand back down, and then I'd start talking. But it also gave me time to, like, process and think. And so now I hardly raise my hand anymore. Now there's still times, like, I think I can't remember the last time I raised my hand in an argument.
So good.
But yeah, so your girl's gone a long way. But it's also too, like, I've learned to, like, trust that Giannis, like, is gonna, like, ask me about my thoughts on it. Like, we have never been in an argument. Like, I know I say nevers and always, but we very rarely, and I would honestly say, like, never, but, like, we have not been in an argument where he has not asked me for, like, what my experience was in it. And so, you know, and I think when we first started dating, that wasn't true for, like, other relationships that I had been in or was in. And so, like, that is also something that I had to learn too, is, like, you know, for me, it helped me build my trust in him, but also in our relationship to know that, like, both of our, like, points are just as important as the others, and, like, we will get to each other. Like, we will get to each other. We make space for each other.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's, like, that's, like, probably, like, my biggest story. It's, like, that belief of, like, him waiting for me and knowing that he's going to choose me. So a big part of that unhealthy versus healthy confrontation mindset that I had is, like, unhealthy in the beginning, I assumed that he was only in it for himself. Like, he just wanted to say his piece and be done with it. But now, like, I believe that he wants the best for our relationship, and, like, which I have always known that he does, but I think it looks a lot different as you grow with each other. I promise Ash is fine. If you can hear him, he's fine. I don't know why he's meowing like that. But I also know now that the way, like, healthy confrontation is that believing the best in each other and giving each other the benefit of the doubt. And so I want to say, too, the difference between healthy and healthy and unhealthy confrontation is the belief on which you choose to act. So, yeah.
That is very true.
But, yeah, that's all we have for today. So thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening.
And next week we'll be having another podcast. So
I think we're doing
next week we're doing feelings are not facts.
But if you liked this podcast, make sure you like, subscribe, share with your friends, family, whoever you want to share it with, somebody you would like to about healthy confrontation. Even though that's
confront
like not a healthy whatever. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So, I like ruined the whole idea with that one.
Just share.
Just like and share. And subscribe.
Follow us.
Yes, we are Confront Your Mind on all platforms. And yeah, just keep listening.
Yeah.
And thanks for being here.
Yeah. Remember that we're all learning.
And don't be afraid to get confrontational this week. Healthily.
Keep it cute until we meet again.
Cheers.
Cheers.